Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Farrell Cook, class of 2014, 2019, soon to be 2024. And I'm also a member of the Women's Network Philanthropy Committee. To learn more about our Women's Network, please feel free to visit the link that will be posted in our chat. The Philanthropy Committee is committed to provide resources to the university on behalf of Rochester women and shine a light on issues near to our hearts and critically important to the university. Our committee proudly awards the Women's Network Scholarship to undergraduate students, the future of the Women's Network. Since the inception of this scholarship, I am proud to share that we have now awarded an annual scholarship to 3 Rochester students. In addition to the Women's Network Scholarship, the Philanthropy Committee identifies crucial causes to raise awareness and support. Our current focus is the mental health of our community. The funds we are championing support the resources of the Mobile Crisis Unit, the CARE Network, and the Psychiatry Department. This morning, I'd like to welcome Alex Samwers, Director of the CARE Network, and also my twin sister, Dr. Michael Scharf, Psychiatrist in Chief at URMC, Golisano Children's Hospital, and Chief of Division of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and Director of Psychiatry Graduate Medical Education, and Associate Professor of Clinical Psychiatry, and Carrie Meeks, Clinical Director of the URMC Mobile Crisis Team and Crisis Call Hotline. In the chat, you can learn more about the work of the Philanthropy Committee and our guests today. We are so grateful that you are spending some time with us today to share with us your work and the impact it has within the university and the greater Rochester community. Before we kick off our conversation, there are just 2 pieces of housekeeping I'd like to share. 1, this program is being recorded, and 2, we will have time for your questions. Just please utilize the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit your questions. I'd now like to welcome our facilitator for today's program, University Trustee and Co-Chair of the Women's Network Philanthropy Committee, Gwen Green.
Hi, thank you so much, Farrell. Hi, everybody. This is delightful. I'm so glad to know you're all on the call. We did this on campus, Melior Weekend, and it was amazing. We had so much interacting, so much warmth. People shared really personal stories about themselves. And we all said when we finished, we need to get this out to more people. We need to make this available. And obviously, the pressures of what's going on our and other campuses since October has been really overwhelming. So the needs have grown, and what we are enabling through the Women's Network and your philanthropy has become increasingly important. So I'm delighted to see everybody on the call today. This is very exciting for us, and thank you so much. And thank you to our panelists. What I want to do, although I always want to talk, I really want you to hear from them because they really have informative things. I'm just a cheerleader. So I think I'd like to start because we've learned that amazingly, most of us don't even know how much is going on behind the scenes to help our kids and our students. So I'm going to have each of them explain what their area of expertise is and what they do and how they interact with students. And I think we'll start with Alex and the CARE Network, if you tell us a bit about it.
Thank you, Gwen. It's really great to be here and to be asked back for this important topic. So I'm Alex Samwers. I'm the director of our CARE Network here at the University of Rochester. I'm a licensed master social worker here in New York. So the CARE Network provides tailored and individualized non-clinical case management to the entire student population of the University of Rochester. So any enrolled student, that's about 12,100 right now across undergraduate and graduate student, is eligible for our services. Primarily what we do, we address questions and concerns on all aspects of a student's life, personal, social, academic success. And our job and our goal is to facilitate connection and referral so that a student has a sense of belonging, but also a sense of support and assistance in navigating the truly myriad resources we have for assistance across the whole campus. And another important piece of what we do is we actually educate on those resources. Oftentimes, this may be the first time a student has interacted with a primary care provider consistently or a mental health provider consistently. And it's our job is to really normalize and standardize that this is new and it's okay to ask questions. And our role is to make sure that no student feels that they are alone while they're navigating those challenges. An important piece of what we do also is we provide consultation and support for our faculty and staff who support students in distress. more and more frequently, students are getting more comfortable sharing about their medical or mental health status with faculty, with club advisors or organizers, other staff members who may not have backgrounds in mental health. And we do many trainings, especially in partnership with our health promotions office, to equip those people with skills to engage students who may be in distress with those conversations, how to help them feel confident in accessing the care network and being open to help, but also to make sure that they're getting the support that they need to be able to handle those conversations as well. It's something we're really proud of.
Thank you. And the Care Network is really important, and maybe we'll touch on this later, because students can refer each other. It's a way, because remember, we're dealing with a population that's now HIPAA enabled, and their parents are not part of this process. So we enable other students to say, there's a kid in crisis, you might want to reach out. And I think that's extraordinary. And it's an education process. And it's also such a warm, familial kind of process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Carrie, tell us a bit now about the mobile crisis unit and that mobile crisis hotline that you run.
Thank you, Gwen. I am so grateful to have this opportunity to participate in continuing to bring awareness to mental health in our community. The CDC estimates that 1 in 5 adults in the US currently live with a mental illness. More than 1 in 5 youth in the US either currently have or will experience a seriously debilitating mental health illness. We all know mental health doesn't discriminate, and any one of us can experience mental health concerns at any point in time. But knowing and being aware of these facts doesn't necessarily make it any easier to navigate a crisis. So despite the amazing conversations and advocacy that continues to occur throughout our communities, there's still a stigma, whether it's a public stigma, whether it's a self-stigma, and it's still a very real concern for many. In addition, access to mental health care still isn't where we need it to be, hence the ongoing conversations and advocacy through programs like this. Individuals experiencing mental health concerns in our community may find themselves asking, what do I do? Who do I ask for help? This is where our crisis call line and our mobile crisis teams come into play. Our crisis call line is available 24/7 and offers that safe space for anyone experiencing mental health concerns. It's staffed by licensed clinicians that are trained to truly hear someone's concerns and take that guesswork out of determining what is going to be most helpful. Whether an individual needs someone to be present with them and hear them out while they process a difficult situation, or whether they need a referral to a higher level of intervention to ensure safety, the crisis call line can ensure and provide that guidance to help get those appropriate supports in place. Our mobile crisis team, that is one of those options. We will respond anywhere within Monroe County and assist individuals and their families in navigating a mental health crisis. The goal is to divert from the hospital. Too often, when someone doesn't know what to do or who to reach out to for help, they present to an emergency department seeking that guidance and support. In 2022, it was estimated that nearly 6 million people throughout the US sought out help for their mental health concerns in an emergency department setting. But emergency departments, by design, are intended to treat those imminent safety concerns and life-threatening emergencies, which may not always be the case for someone experiencing a mental health crisis. It is in those situations that our mobile crisis team can be there to provide that support and intervention within the comfort of someone's own home. We've redesigned our program operations, and our mobile crisis team is now able to respond to over 90% of service requests within the same day. Our response time is averaging about 2 hours, and we are able to prioritize our more acute situations. The new program structure is also incorporating specific roles and responsibilities intended to provide that continuity of care and quicker access to services. I've had the privilege to be a part of the mobile crisis team for several years now, and I can speak to the intentional growth and development of this program. We pride ourselves on being comprehensive, collaborative, and providing those individualized services to best meet patient needs. Ultimately, our goal is to continue to expand our services and our reach into the community so that we can ensure that anyone out there who doesn't know where to turn or who to ask for help is able to find us and feel heard and supported.
Thank you. You know what's so important about this? Think about our population at the U of R. Yes, there's a small cohort, that may have been introduced to psychiatric care in their childhoods. They came from families who are very aware of it. But so much of our population is underserved communities or international students for whom this is an absolutely alien concept. So to have this available and to almost be in their face with it and say, talk to us, that what you're going through is not unique. There's nothing wrong with you. Don't be ashamed. This is a healthy thing to do. It's funny. I must do an aside. I'm now writing a column for my local paper about retirement and what's different. And I talk about medical care and therapy. I grew up in a generation where I wouldn't date a guy if he wasn't in therapy. That was sort of the life I knew. But we are dealing with so many kids whose families would say, that is not something our family does. That's for cowards. No. So the fact that these services are available is remarkable. And now Dr. Scharf, with real pedigree and the experience and the really vast overview of what's going on, talk to us about everything you're doing and seeing.
Sure. Well, my role, as I was introduced, I'm the psychiatrist in chief for Golisano Children's Hospital, and I'm the director of our children's mental health division and services for all of UR Medicine. There are and the head of division in child psychiatry. So we see a wide breadth of patients, of people, of families in different settings. We also have a number of education programs and research that we're doing around suicidality, around social determinants of health and how they impact not only the occurrence of what we define as mental health disorders, but the course of them. In terms of our clinical services, a simple way to think about it is in our region, which we can define by Monroe County and the surrounding 12 counties, we are by far the largest provider of organized public health, mental health service, outpatient clinic service. And we are the only provider of everything else that could be considered medicalized mental health care. So like inpatient hospitalization, partial hospitalization, supporting people with children with chronic illnesses in the hospital and in the community, and mobile crisis, which you've already heard about. We are very excited. If you've been driving around the campus at all, if you drive down Elmwood, you can't miss the big construction referred to as the Strong Expansion Project, which will include brand new EDs and some inpatient space, new trauma bay. If you go on the other side of the Med Center campus on Crittenden Road, there's also construction for what will be our regions and only the second in New York State's pediatric mental health urgent care. And we're going to have ribbon cutting on June 26th. Looking forward to opening this summer. This will be an alternative to the emergency room. Really, I could restate much of what Carrie just said about our emergency rooms being a safety net, but they, by design, have to be one size fits all. And it's not a good fit, particularly for a lot of children and families. So the idea of our urgent care, we walk in on demand, both live and on telemedicine, on demand crisis visits for children and families to continue to contribute to meeting the unmet need for children's mental health. Carrie cited a few numbers, and I'll add a couple to that. Hopefully it's informative, not confusing. If we think about rates, as Carrie said, generally speaking, it's true that since 2015, we've talked about a pediatric mental health crisis. Now, that's looking at rates overall, which was in 2015, about 20% of kids estimated to have mental health conditions that cause serious impairment. The top 5 causes of disability for children are now all mental health or neurodevelopmental conditions. The rates of suicide have increased, unfortunately, since that time. And the number of children presenting to emergency departments across the country, across the continent, really, have just steadily increased since 2015. one of the things that I'm proud of here is how our community has responded. And credit where credit's due, the philanthropy in our region, including from this group, has really made a difference. And today, in 2024, not only are we celebrating, looking forward to this pediatric mental health urgent care, but we've really made a difference. 2 years ago, the Academy of Child Psychiatry, American Academy of Pediatrics, and Children's Hospital Networks declared a state of emergency around children presenting to and being abandoned in emergency departments. That's actually not true in Rochester. If you look at us compared to the rest of the country, our presentation to our CPEP, our Psychiatric Emergency Department, matches 2019. It's still unacceptably high. It's still very difficult to work there. It's still very difficult to get care there. But it's 2019 crisis, whereas in Chicago, in most cities, St. Louis, most cities that we think of as small cities, except along the coast, it's continued to increase since 2019. So we've really gotten ahead of leveling off. I can't quite say we've reversed it or fixed things, but we've leveled off the demand to our services through expansion, and philanthropy has led the way. In 2020, we opened the Golisano Children's Hospital, the Golisano Pediatric Behavioral Health and Wellness building on South Ave, which is the headquarters for our children's mental health division now, and it allowed us to double the size of our outpatient service operation and increase partial hospital by 50%. We have the Brighter Days Pediatric Mental Health Urgent Care that would not be happening without philanthropy. And in case you haven't thought about how this works mechanically in the healthcare part of the U of R, most of us in leadership have a number of good ideas that we'd like to act on, particularly in the fields that aren't considered the big money makers. So, in my case, I walk around with a portfolio of about 12 ideas that I could act on. They're all important. No one ever says no, because we're talking about child's lives. But how does something move from the pool to the top of the line, top of the list? It's from philanthropy. So I'm very glad to be here, and I'm very thankful for those who've been donors, and myself, my family are part of the donors for U of R as well.
Thank you. You're singing my song. So philanthropy, obviously, that's our committee. Farrell and I are on that committee. It's something so important. Look, it's not about us saying, give us your money. It's us saying, we are giving you an opportunity.
That's
to
right.
save lives and to change the world, and to do it now when these young kids are so impressionable. I'm glad you brought up the new urgent care facility. I think that's so critical. First of all, I'm now like an urgent care fan. I got hives last week with all the stuff going on campus, and someone said, go to the ER. I said, what are you, crazy? I'll go to urgent care. The guy diagnosed it, he prescribed, he called me back later. So I think urgent care is what we are all getting used to doing when something's wrong. And so the fact that it's called pediatric, I want to just clarify, it's also teenagers and families. So, don't just say children, we're talking about the population that we are serving, right, Dr. Scharf?
Yeah, so so there are conventions of language, right? Like on my screen here, it says Golisano Children's Hospital. I'm in the child and adolescent psychiatry field. But this really includes teenagers. In fact, when we talk about adolescence, the National Institute of Health defines adolescence as 15 to 24. And that's based on, it's not, I guess it's still emerging in that we're fine-tuning the science, but now well-established understanding of how brains develop and how people develop. The New York State Office of Mental Health generally divides the services between child and adolescent versus adult upon graduation from high school. Now, if you work with a lot of kids or work in schools or just have experience from friends or family, that's not always at 18. Sometimes that's at 21. And when we think about launching to become a successful adult, there's a recognized developmental stage, which the Academy of Child Psychiatry refers to as transitional age youth, that most of us think of as college age. And I do prefer to think of it as a developmental phase rather than just college, because not everyone's in college. But the directly supporting schools and what they're addressing is also very important. In addition to the work we do collaboratively with U of R, I'm one of the consulting psychiatrists at SUNY Brockport, and we provide a lot of education and support to colleges in the region. The numbers about what happens with college populations are really evolving. I'm hesitant to give you a number that you could take with you for a couple of years, but some of the survey data suggests that 20 to 30% of kids come to college with either currently prescribed a psychiatric medication or having been within the past couple of years. That kind of, as I've like leaned into that and learned that and lived it, it's been hard for me to get my head around. The other really interesting thing is what people imagine the experience of college life and who their cohort will be is influencing college choice. In our region, I think that's most notable at RIT, where the number of kids who self-identify as having neurodevelopmental challenges, being on the spectrum, or describing themselves as being neurodiverse, has really increased. And people who identify that way, or they are concerned about that for their kids, see that as an advantage to go to that school. And that's just one example that's sort of profound in numbers, but that's happening with college choice all over the country right now.
So that's a really good point. And that leads me into a question, and I'll start with you, Alex. How do you see things changing? I mean, what are the things that are suddenly presenting that, a year or two ago, you really didn't confront, and now you're trying to figure out, how do we adapt? How do we move with it?
I think Dr. Sharp brings up a great point. We are seeing more and more students who come in with known diagnoses and treatment plans, as well as more and more students who are self-identifying as being on the spectrum or in the neurodiverse community. I'll speak for our Director of Office of Disability Resources, Jen Prosio, who is seeing more and more requests for accommodation than really they've ever seen before, particularly for neurodiverse students. Especially therapeutic single dorm rooms are in high demand right now. And I think that really speaks to the level of distress experienced by being around a lot of people. So the sort of traditional college setting is in a residence hall and in a dormitory, where you don't necessarily have control over all of your environment. And I think what I'm seeing more is more students who are really seeking control over their physical environment, as well as experiencing more challenges, honestly, regulating in the face of what is pretty typical distress or stress for this age group, the transitional adult group developmentally, right? Like, this is a normal time for a lot of brain development, a lot of social development, identity development, relationship development. I'm just throwing out, like, from Erik Erikson in social work, right? This is a normal time for experimentation, for going out there. More students are afraid to do that, and more students are experiencing more and more what they would probably classify as a crisis when they're confronted with conflict, or when they're confronted with an otherwise what we would maybe consider a typical experience for a college-age adult.
Thank you. That's really important and informative and understandable. Carrie, how are you seeing it present?
I think along the same lines, we are seeing, not only in the young adult and adult population, but children as well, more complex presentations, increasing acuity in the concerns, like Alex mentioned, things that are now maybe not years ago escalating to a crisis situation are escalating more quickly to crisis scenarios. We are very lucky. We have a multidisciplinary team, so we have a collective experience that is vast and diverse, and we are able to consult with our providers throughout the day on an ongoing basis. So when we do encounter situations, I mean, we're operating from that biopsychosocial model, right? Where we know it's not just one thing contributing to the presenting concern. There's layers, whether that is the mental health concerns, social stressors that are increasing, especially with the increase in the utilization of social media. That ability to consult with not only our providers, but the others on our team that may have experience in certain realms. We've got folks with experience throughout juvenile justice and probation fields. We have individuals that have worked through Center for Youth and are familiar with homelessness or other insecurities, food, housing. We are very blessed
You
to have
also have
that.
a former county legislator. whose
Yes.
second career as a therapist. So
So,
it really is a diverse crew.
right, as we near an election coming up, and we notice an increase in reactions to whatever may be going on in the political arena. So definitely more complexity, more acuity, but also the ability to draw on multiple backgrounds and experiences.
I want to just, continue to toot the horn for that mobile crisis team with the work Carrie's done. She talked about the last 6 years. We really started to see the expansion of that team starting in 2018. And you can see, if we look at trajectories of people coming to the ED and then increasing the volume of service provided by mobile crisis, if we look at the projection of what we expected, for every 2 mobile crisis visits we added, we lowered the reality by a visit for the CPAP for kids. And it's pretty cool to see that. I mean, and I'm sure folks who've attended similar sort of events as this before, we give lots of appeals to try to do the right thing because we know it helps. It's really great that we're starting to see the impact and that we can count it. Also building on this idea of how things are evolving, colleges are, immersed right now with populations of youth who have, felt the brunt of the pandemic and what happened to socialization and to even school functioning. I think the biggest challenge for us in the next few years is to balance accommodating distress, accommodations versus challenges. And if you only accommodate, then you have people who say they're in less distress, but they can't do anything. They can't talk to a teacher. They can't be successful socially. So, the challenge for a college right now is you get a transcript and it doesn't mean the same thing it meant 4 years ago. Right? It doesn't, like you could assume if someone took an AP class and got a good score that there was some negotiating of systems and showing up on time and, not being able to attend other classes because you attended your exam, right? It's just like a minor detail. And I mention APs because they're happening right now, but that's not true anymore. Now the schools just accommodate everything. You don't even have to leave your home. And so even the ways we traditionally evaluate and understand people's experiences have changed. And the number of anxiety disorders in teenagers and young adults is estimated to have doubled since the pandemic.
And that's interesting because you lead me into what I was thinking about. We've had the pandemic, we've had October 7th on campus. We have all the social media articles that we're reading about and what that's doing to people. And I wonder, what do you see as the biggest challenges now? That's sort of the beginning of that conversation. And maybe I'll go around again and let you sum it up, but go to Alex. What are the challenges going forward? What are you worried about?
I'm going to jump off of the last point that Dr. Scharf made, which is that our current graduating class, they graduated high school in the middle of the pandemic. Our first year and sophomore year classes, our incoming first years, were really outside of formalized education for 2.5 years. And I'm really worried about that because in schools, you get access to that socialization practice with talking to teachers, with working through conflict. We are seeing certainly the prevalence of anxiety-related disorders, whether they're diagnosed or not. But students are really experiencing a lot of true distress at having a tough conversation with a friend, at hearing the word no, at saying, no, I'm sorry, you don't get a makeup for this. Students are really used to being accommodated, and I don't think accommodation is bad outright, but I also don't think struggle is bad outright. And our students have not had an opportunity to struggle in a caring environment that says failing is how we learn. And our students are getting really used to hearing yes and, because this is the only lever we've had to pull throughout the pandemic. We felt awful that they weren't getting the experiences they were supposed to be getting, that the world told them they were supposed to be getting. And we're sort of in a catch-22. So I think my hope for the future is again, through our providing support to faculty and staff as well, like giving permission to say, here's the boundary, but also providing the skills-based support that students need, right? I'm so pro therapy. I want students to go get therapy, but the reality of college is that you're cramming a year's worth of knowledge into 15 weeks. You get a couple weeks and then you do it again. And that's a really short amount of time to make meaningful progress from a therapeutic setting. So we're really operating in the crisis and acuity standpoint while saying, okay, what skills do we need to tolerate this distress? What skills do we need to practice advocacy? And what skills do we need to have hard conversations while we sort of embrace conflict as a really healthy part of life?
That's terrific. You know, there's just such good points, and look, it's frightening. It's upsetting. I keep thinking we ought to be doing this panel for our parents. No, I don't mean our parents. I mean the parents of our students, who I'm sure are struggling and grappling and wondering, and they can't get too involved because of HIPAA and just because they want to send their kids out there to be adults, but who probably have a zillion questions about this. And so I think we're going to have to do a third. It's too much fun. We're going to have to do a third one and get parents engaged. We're going to have to go to parents. Okay. Carrie, what do you see as the challenges that sort of worry you and concern you and challenge you?
So Alex referenced the need to get individuals into therapeutic relationships, into these services that can help build and foster those coping skills. As we see this increased need for interventions and services, we all know we're still working on meeting those needs in the community with access to care. So what we're finding is we're running into a cycle of crisis where we're out and we're responding to these crises. We're helping to stabilize in the interim, but while we're still building up those additional services in the community, we're not being able to teach those additional skill sets in order to maintain that stability. So we're getting caught in that cycle. And I think continuing to have this type of conversation and bring together all the powers that be to help get those additional resources in place.
Great. Dr. Scharf.
Well, I just want to acknowledge, and I bet I don't know how interactive we're going to make this with the group, but I bet some of the people on are parents or grandparents, perhaps, for kids. I have two kids that went through U of R. One's graduating in a couple weeks,
Awesome.
and you know, as Alex said, he had a virtual end of his senior year and had like a graduation where you show up at a certain time slot and individually walk across the stage while your parents walk across in front of the stage. It was so this is going to be his first real graduation. So I identify with this as a parent as well as a provider. And I do think it's a different world. I hope it's not a forever change, right? I mean, I do think that the world will catch on, schools will catch on to, you know, it really is a spectrum of challenge versus accommodation, not a one or the other, and finding a correct path forward. But in the meantime, there's a number of people who are young adults who are finishing high school that we probably need to be more deliberate, not just, you know, to Carrie's point, I think in our area in particular, which stands out, it's not true everywhere, but in our area in particular, we've done well adding more crisis resources. I think we look more like the rest of the country in terms of the promoting resilience, promoting strength resources, giving people real experiences where we say, you know what, if you graduate from this high school, you've had a teacher tell you no. You've had to negotiate a hard thing where, you know, one class requires you to be absent and you just have to tell the other teacher, I'm going to miss it. That doesn't, I did that. That doesn't happen anymore.
You know, it's interesting because you brought up something earlier and I was thinking about it. You were talking about how kids sometimes choose schools because they know there's a certain cohort. I mean, it's such a moving target. You know, back in the day, you pick it for a major or a sports team or an a cappella group. So now that begs the question of how do we better, and I don't know if we have anything with all our orientation we do, freshman orientation, do you get to speak? Do we have a piece in there for the students and even the parents that talks about understanding the problems that may arise and how we're prepared to meet them? How do we educate them so when they arrive, they know, as the same as the gym is a resource in the library, all this amazing, the care network, the crisis line, the psychiatric treatment is available? What are we doing, or what can we do?
I think the first part is to make sure that we all get a little more, wherever we're at now, get a little more sophisticated and consider this a charge from me or from the group. If this is all new and you use the term mental health to describe everything interchangeably, well, there's a great resource, mentalhealthliteracy.org. There's a couple very short, like 2-minute videos that talk about just distinguishing between, what's just the normal ups and downs of life versus a right now mental health distress, emotional distress, which is different from a mental health crisis, both of which are different from being diagnosed with a disorder. And so, and being able to be a little more sophisticated about that, and then match it to talking about resources for everyone when you need them on demand. If you do have a disorder, you should have a plan. You should have a doctor. You should have someone overseeing it all. Even if the doctor, and sometimes the right thing is the doctor's home and you call this number if you have problems. Sometimes it's you better have a therapist where you're going to school. Each plan is different. It's really not one size fits all. And in fact, if we only offer one thing, if we tell everyone, oh, just call the counseling center, if whatever, what you end up with is a lot of people who are well served and they do good work, and a bunch of people who aren't well served. And so you got to make sure that it's, again, we want to get a little more sophisticated and try to match what we can provide with individual needs.
It's great. Alex, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, you bring up orientation, right? We really hit the ground there where we do a panel for parents to really educate them on here's who we are. It's an in-person panel that we record too. We make our phone numbers and our emails available. We want questions, but we also educate about what the resource is. Myself, the director of parent and family relations, director of the counseling center, director of health promotions, director of primary care, we all meet with parents and say, here's who we are and here's how we help your student. We try and meet students in a really interesting way. Something we have noticed trend-wise for the Care Network is one of the top 5 areas of concern that we get are what we call, quote, missing or non-responsive. So student hasn't gone to class in a couple of weeks, students stop showing up to practice, like we start getting more of those, but they're also getting harder to reach. More and more students do not check their emails. More and more students do not have voicemail boxes that are set up, or voicemail boxes that indicate this is who this person is. And so we're really utilizing our cross-campus partners. We're calling coaches. We are working with our Res Life team. Where appropriate, we have releases of information to collaborate with our counseling center partners to really reach students. But we do trainings for student leaders. So we do trainings for our student government. We do trainings for new fraternity and sorority affairs officers. We do a Meliora leadership program presentation to make sure that students who are in leadership positions who will contact other students, they can get that information out there. They're more likely to talk to students. I think this pairs with a question I see in the chat from Olivia. Students may not want to talk to a staff member first, right? They're going to talk to their peers. And so we're trying to educate our peer leaders on what we are, what we do, trying to make it a friendly, soft handoff for students to really try and make sure they're getting that information, and we're missing those folks that Dr. Sharp was talking about who may not get connected to the counseling center.
Well, okay, so yeah, that question in the chat room. So what are the mechanics? If a student says or knows, there's something wrong with my roommate, or they're, they haven't left their room, or I think they're suicidal, how do they actually make a referral? And how do you take that in and then, walk us through that process?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways. Primarily, we use our online referral system, which you can find at rochester.edu/care. Something I'm really proud of is we actually added it to our UR mobile app. So you can actually find it on your phone for students, making it really easy to you don't have to log onto your computer. You can just pull it up on the app on your phone. But we also tell students that if you want to come in and make a meeting because you're noticing a friend having a hard time, but you don't know what to do about it, we will consult with you. You can call us, leave a message, you can email us. We have a general Care Network email. You can say, hey, I'm worried about so-and-so, and we'll turn it into a referral using our form. We also educate when we share that information with parents as well. So I mentioned Dawn Bruner, our director of parent and family relations. Her office is across the hall from mine. I routinely get emails and follow-ups from her saying, hey, I heard from this parent who's worried about their student. Can you turn this into a referral and have somebody reach out? So we really intake it from everywhere. It doesn't have to come in from one certain way.
That's terrific. Okay, that's really great. And Carrie, sort of circling back to the same question and, the challenges and what you're seeing now.
Well, like they were saying, I really think it's about the collaboration and ensuring that, like Alex said, if you can't reach that specific individual, there's still a support network around them that can be utilized to help provide guidance and help ensure that those resources can be utilized when they are needed. We have our crisis call line, Dr. Sharp referenced, making sure not only are you seeking support and help, but that it's the right type of support and help. When folks reach out to our crisis call line, they are able to walk them through what would be the most helpful next steps so that you are seeking that specific type of care that will be most beneficial.
And we should post that number.
Yes, Sarah, there are a couple of things that have come up that,
Right.
Sarah, let's post.
585-275-8686 is that behavioral health crisis line.
Great. And that actually leads me, Dr. Sharp, there's another question that came in that is spot on. We keep talking about mental health as a crisis and, all the scary parts of it. And mental health is also an important positive thing.
Right.
We all want to be mentally healthy.
Yes.
And that's a good thing
Yeah.
to work for. It's
That's
like
right.
seeing your dentist and your eyeglass guy, you want to be sure your head's working right. So how do we start maybe having these discussions where it's not as scary and it's not as embarrassing and it's viewed as something, wow, I want to be part of that.
Yeah, it is. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you, and I want to acknowledge that it will take active work. We have made a lot of progress with stigma about accessing mental health services during crisis. My impression over years watching is that actually comes from a place of loss and fear. People are seeing suicide rates increase. People have been through mental health crisis, and they realize, like, this is so horrible. We're just going to get over ourselves and get help, or get help for a family member. That's good. I have nothing negative to say about that. And we should also be seeking resiliency and health and mental toughness, if you will, and as an explicit goal. And I think an area that we have not made as much ground on is the idea that you might have to today, however we ended up here, you might have to have teenagers do like Toastmasters, or practice doing something where they do basic social skills in order to say they're good at it, just like you make them climb up the rope to make sure that their limbs work correctly. And I think that's the type of approach we're going to need to take. I could come up with a couple suggestions, but I think even the theme today in 2024, the theme is the most important part. Would you be okay if somehow you were dropped in a bus station in Chicago? Could you talk to someone without your phone? Could you talk to someone and figure out how to get out of there? Like, think about any college students, that would be like a, giant crisis. And that's okay. I mean, I say I'm trying to use humor in a funny way, but it's not, I mean, it really is a crisis for some people. The idea of having to talk to a series of strangers to acknowledge you don't know something and that you're vulnerable about something, it's a big deal for a lot of people. And so I'd love to see us doing more to promote strengths and skills in that way, as part of thinking about public health, the same way we think about physical education in schools. And I also want to make sure that we maintain some empathy around it. And that's a trick too, right? I mean, the spectrum I've talked about of accommodation versus challenge. There's also, you could go too far in either direction with, empathy and sympathy versus being, uncaring, just do it. Right. And while when someone's in crisis, I don't think it's possible to be too empathic. When someone says, I can't talk to the guy at the counter, you can be too empathic. So you just got to say, go do it. And so figuring out that balance, recognizing that some of these skills that most of us who are older than 30 just can take for granted and assume, we can't really take it for granted right now. And hopefully we'll get back to when we can again. But we're not there.
That's great. Something just came up in the chat room that said, as we always have freshman courses on like writing and basic skills, wouldn't it be great to have a required freshman course on how to socialize, how to sort of do that? Because you're
Yeah.
right. I went to an event in New York. We had a U of R event, and it was alums, and there were a couple of students there. And I forgot my phone. I left my phone home, and I had somebody picking me up, and I sort of wrote down what time. And I get in there, and I mentioned to the students, who said, "Oh my God, what will you do?" As if your life is over.
Right.
But you're going home. And I thought, oh, no, I can function. I can figure this out. But you're absolutely right. That was a good point. But I love this idea of a course. And it just seems like such a basic idea. If we teach them to write, teach them to read, why don't we teach them to think and manage on their own? Alex, other thoughts on that?
I love the idea. I know that it does exist in a couple of different ways. So there's a CASC class for students who are connected with the Kern Center, or some of our first gen students who don't have access to the prior education and knowledge that students who have family members who have gone to college before. So we do have like Life 101 kind of skills classes. I would love to see that open to more and more students. I think the targeted nature of our current programming is wonderful. We do EOC and HEOP programs, so students who come to campus a little bit earlier before the start of orientation to get oriented, to get earlier access to information, to offices and resources. I would love to see that class open to more folks. We do have a social connections lab group offered through the counseling center as a group that students can take part of. Obviously, that's through the therapeutic lens and setting, and I really love how much it's been utilized, as well as the therapeutic writing group through the counseling center. And I would love to take that into a non-clinical space as well. Students feel a lot of pressure to be really involved. We have lots of double, triple majors. We have students who are leaders in lots of different organizations, and but then conversely, we have students who are not involved in anything, and who are feeling really overwhelmed and really stuck and not really sure how to talk about it. So I think the challenge for us is going to be, how do we both do intentional and formal programming, formal classes like that, and how do we pitch the informal and passive way to get that information to students in a low stakes way?
Great thoughts. Carrie, additional thoughts?
I think those are amazing ideas, and I'm happy to hear that a lot of that's already in practice, and I would love to see that expanded not only to the individuals themselves, but their parents and guardians and those that are going to be able to help support what they are learning and discovering, so that it's an ongoing, not just once they're in those groups, but something they take away with them into the community.
And it's interesting, because we just got a question, and I'm going to start with Dr. Scharf on it, that says, how can I be better able to support my loved ones who are in these positions? Do I show too much love? Do I show too little love? Do I hover? Do I just hope what do I do?
So I can, whenever I'm talking to just a general audience and I don't know the specific people, I can give general themes, and I have confidence in the themes, and the details will vary. So focus on function, focus on, not to the point where achievement is more important than who they are as a person. Again, it's always a balance. It's always like, how do you find the sweet spot? But, what did you like this class? What did you do in the class? What were the challenges? Oh, you did it. You were successful. That's great. Focusing on getting a sense of people having a sense of accomplishment about these sort of what we used to call soft skills, which are now becoming more and more important. That's one theme. Another is, you can continue to educate yourself. And I saw one of the questions asked about resources. The childmind.net is excellent. The Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, which is aacap.org, is the website, has something called Facts for Families that has literally hundreds of topic areas in dozens of languages. They're short, like one pagers, sort of to just be familiar with something, including things around diagnoses, but also around life challenges, how to respond when natural disasters happen or traumatic events are being displayed on TV. What we're experiencing, depending on how you are touched by it, what we're seeing, you might be witnessing it through TV. You may have loved ones who are impacted in Israel or in Gaza. This is, there's some pointers for how to deal with these events that happen. So having a couple resources you can go to, I think, are always good. At our own University of Rochester child psychiatry websites, we have links to some of these as well. Those are some resources I would think of. But again, focus thematically, focusing on, asking about, how did you navigate things socially? If you say you like something, why do you like it? What makes it cool? What do you do? How did you accomplish it? What's the challenge you overcame? That's how I would encourage folks to do that.
Yeah, Alex, other thoughts?
Having those conversations early. I think I love it when parents are talking to their students. Students are sometimes really afraid to tell their parents that they're struggling, and the pre-work that is necessary to have those conversations. It doesn't matter. I also want to affirm, like, you can have a wonderful relationship with your child. They may still be anxious about sharing with you. That does not mean that you've had a bad relationship. That does not mean that you've not set your child up there. Just that is a normal reaction to sharing something vulnerable when you're not even 100% sure what the reaction's going to be. Especially around academic success, students, it's normal to not do well in a class. It's normal to get a C when you usually get B pluses and A's, especially in your first year in college, for sure. One of the best pieces of advice I got before I was going to school from my high school guidance counselor was, your grade point average will drop by like half a grade to a full grade in your first year. Don't panic. And that helped me embrace that. But the more that you can incorporate those conversations just in everyday settings and low stakes settings, I think Dr. Sharp set it up perfectly with, what did you like about that activity? What did you like about, like, oh, you seem like you're doing, you had a great, soccer practice or whatever, like opening the doors to those conversations early. And sometimes even just, I'm going to quote our director of our counseling center, that clear is kind. Even just explicitly saying, hey, you may run into some of these challenges. I am still here for you. I'm not going to run the other direction if you tell me that you failed a class or that you had a fight or that you did something that you weren't proud of. I think that explicitness, all of our students are really craving more very clear, very explicit communication across the board, emotionally, directions from classes, how to log into Blackboard, everything. And so I think the more that we can just very explicitly say, this may happen, and I'm still here and I want to talk to you about it, whether we have to come up with like a signal of how do we say I need a conversation. I think that's a good way to.
I think it's
Those are
excellent.
great points.
Predictability reduces anxiety.
Yes, knowing that initially these conversations may not flow as naturally or smoothly as you had hoped, but as you continue to have these conversations, they will become more commonplace. They will start to feel more comfortable. And you'll be modeling the ability to initiate that conversation and keep it going.
Look, we are not an average school. We are a very special school. We are very rigorous. We have discussions at board meetings. Some of our trustees have children who've gone to the U of R or maybe there now, and they say, my kids can't handle it. They're overwhelmed by the stress, and much of it's self-imposed, but still, they're beside themselves. What are we doing? And, that's a reality, Dr. Sharp.
It is a reality, and it is, saying it's self-imposed is true enough, is a useful way to distinguish it from the idea that like this group is somehow broken or it's all genetically mediated. But it's not really like someone wakes up in the morning and says, I'm gonna flagellate myself with academic tasks, right? There's social constructs, the very kind of things that Alex was talking about that kids find themselves struggling with. You find yourself in a group where all they're talking about is their grades. You find yourself in a group where they're talking about which lab they're going to volunteer in or which site they're going to do things in, and it just becomes like part of the participation to make yourself stressed about achievement. That absolutely happens. It's happened with my kids. And the finding the right balance, sort of making sure you're having conversations that aren't so achievement focused. And I think I alluded to this earlier, but I want to make sure I'm being clear. When I talked about thematically focusing with your loved ones on what they're doing, I don't mean like, actually, I think Alex said it well. What happened in the soccer practice? Not focusing on the win or the loss. what did you like? You want to be a chemistry major? Why? What do you like about chemistry? What did you do? What kind of things? Not what was your grade? I think that that's really, I think that that's really important, and trying to help them focus on something they're actually finding joy in rather than caught up in. But it is a challenge. And I think there's sometimes it's not for the majority of students, right? Because I mean, there's been a selection process for those who get there. But there are times when someone is, their mental health needs, their level of distress is such that doing this rigorous college program at this point in your life this isn't the right time. It's not the majority, and I don't want to say that forecasting it for anyone, but there are times when that happens, and that can be really, really hard. And but sometimes we do have to face it.
I can't believe we're getting near the end. I have questions I haven't gotten to. I have some that were, this is just such an important conversation. We've got a couple of minutes left to wrap up, and what do you want the takeaway to be? I'll start with you, Alex. You got a minute. What do you want to? You don't have to sum up, but what do you want us to remember from what you said?
The University of Rochester is a top-tier research university that attracts the brightest from around the world. And what I would like us to be known for is the level of emotional and compassionate support that we provide for our students.
Wonderful thought. Carrie?
Everything Alex said, and keep the conversations going and keep the awareness at the forefront.
Terrific. And Dr. Scharf, the final word.
Well,
until next time.
I want to again recognize just how special our community is. The U of R is a leader and a high achievement for research, for academics. Absolutely. And we're working hard to support our students. And we've really done a lot in the last few years. I feel really honored to be in the position I'm in with the university, to see the impact that the university community, some of that is the students, some of it's the students' parents, some of it's, again, the broader community. The way the university has helped impact the broader community is really cool. This is a special place, and I'm glad to be part of it. And I'm thankful to each of you who are part of this community as well.
I agree. I am so proud, as everybody knows. I chair annual giving for the university. I have the privilege of the Gwen M. Green Career and Education Center. I chaired Student Life. I love our school. It did so much for me. It helped me have a wonderful life. I love our students. And it's really, and I say to everybody listening in, it's through your generosity that we can do this. You see the quality of people. These are just three people, three amazing people, but they're representative of what people want to bring to our kids. They've chosen to work at the U of R with our students to ensure that they have a better life and that we can start that now. So please think about us. Day of Giving is still open. We have done a challenge, and part of the money, half of it will be going for mental health resources. I mean, I was going to ask everybody, my last question was going to be, what's on your wish list? And, figure money's just got to be there. Nobody wants to talk about it. But remember what I said earlier. We are offering you an opportunity to help save these kids and ensure that they have the best life they can have. We can't do it without your help. So I thank all of the participants. This went around the world today. We had participants overseas as well. I thank our panelists. We're just taking the show on the road. We're going to just go from community to community. And if we didn't get to your questions, I'm sorry. Any additional questions or thoughts, we'll certainly farm them out. And thank you all. And again, especially the panelists. Thank you for all you do. Meliora,